Okay. So it'll be, it's
Well,
just.
I
But
agree.
I'll tell you though, if it feels like this, I'm gonna start pushing hard.
Well, you
I'll
can
bring
just-
up motions.
You can't.
And not tonight, I mean, just in general, for us to be better about
Right.
keeping track of time.
Yeah, but you gotta be careful too, that everything is copacetic.
But we could also continue, it doesn't mean we have to solve everything tonight. There could be like,
Oh, no, tonight is a whole different thing, but I'm talking about a regular meeting. You
yeah.
know, we have to be careful to make sure that everyone's getting what they want said. So that's where me as mayor will keep an eye.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
I think we're both, we both have a.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but we can't, you just have to make sure that it's all good.
And it could be like my responsibility as a trustee is to say, I'd like to take this.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. I'd like to make a
That's-
motion to take this.
Exactly, to not
it's
say we
going.
have to, exactly.
Right.
That's what I want to do.
It doesn't have to be an endless do loop.
Exactly. I'm trying, I don't like those.
All right, it's 5:32. I'm bringing this meeting to order. And rather than do roll call, if all the trustees could just identify themselves that you're here.
Walter Check here.
Mayor Smith here.
John Valentine here.
Trustee Schwartz here.
Okay. And I don't know about trustee Stelter or trustee Bruner. I've not heard a word from them.
I haven't heard anything too.
So we could, well, we can just continue. Because if you have all the four proposed committee duties that are been revised from what we did have earlier. And at this point,
I guess we're gonna be informal about this.
yes,
I have to say, I appreciate seeing this copy of their responsibilities, what they were, and what whoever marked it up, what they proposed to be. But
Stefan and I.
it's good. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, good. Do you want to, hang on a second, I'm pulling out my staple. I want to have them all, just easy to see in front of me. So let me preface this with something that Stefan and I talked about when we were going over these, and Sam was part of the conversation too. One of the things that I know that some of the citizens really appreciated coming to some of these committee meetings, in particular the Parks Committee and Public Safety. And, you know, there were just issues with those committees. There were problems that sometimes the administrator didn't always know what agreements had been made, and just some procedural things that were a little problematic for the trustees too. We got some surprises.
Can I say long predating me?
Yes.
No, I wasn't the only town administrator that didn't know about decisions being made.
Yeah, so, and that was why we thought we should relook at these committees and really get more prescriptive about what their duties are and then talk about it. But the thing that I wanted to be sure of is that we provide a means for citizens that have issues to give them guidance on how they should get their issues addressed. And rather than, hang on one second, trustee Bruner, if you'll just identify yourself for the record.
Trustee Bruner.
Okay, thank you. We're not doing roll call. It's just very informal. So I wanted that to be part of the conversation too. I was hoping there'd be some citizens here to weigh in. But one of the things that the three of us talked about was they're welcome to call myself or email me. They're welcome to email or talk to Stefan. They're welcome to do text my gov or contact any one of you. And then if you get, I've been getting some citizen issues, so I forward them on to Stefan. I'm not about to try to resolve anything, but I mean, how do you all feel about how citizens can engage with us? What thoughts you have?
Yeah, I think whatever, if we hear from the citizen, we ought to bring it to the town council and just air whatever we heard, or if it is a committee issue, I guess, and whoever is on the committee, let them know as well.
And let me back up. I'm not necessarily talking about the committee specifically. I'm talking about by the way these committees are being proposed, there is no longer them meeting once a month and people having that opportunity to show up once a month. So in the absence of that, I would like us to talk about how a citizen who has an issue about anything feels comfortable bringing it to the attention of the town so it can be addressed in some fashion. And we have Text My Gov, which not everybody's on. Not everybody will be on because they don't text, but we need to get the word out that that's an easy way to do it. People have our email addresses on the website. They also have Stefan's email address to encourage people to do, because in this case, otherwise they were waiting a month to come in with an issue on either parks or public safety.
We also offer, so for people that walk in or make phone calls, we still use carbon copies for service requests. And so if somebody comes in with an issue that they, it could be anything from code enforcement to the park needs more stone on a trail. We have service request tickets that we have as well. So
How do they get those?
they come in, they're available, calling us, coming in, and they're still carbon copy. The next step in that process is once iWork is up and running, which we're working on implementation now, we can take that carbon copy or what's ever been written down, digitize it and put it into our iWork system to track the lifetime of that service request. So including staff time on it, materials used, and any equipment used. So if it does generate an invoice, I can bill appropriately if needed.
Yeah, it's good.
Is that publicly accessible?
iWork is not publicly. That's an internal database for anything that we're currently working on.
I'd like to also add another way that people have to register things is the public comment period during trustee meetings. So, I mean, I feel like between Text My Gov, in person, phone calls, emails to any one of us, trustee meetings, I mean, I don't know, other than going door to door, it feels like that's pretty dang comprehensive to me. And I'm curious, town administrator, when I was like, it's work session, do I call you, Stefan?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going first names.
Yeah, like what have you seen in other places where, how do citizens, like if they have something to say?
I have never had the ability to use Text My Gov,
Yeah.
but that also comes, if somebody were to text us or send something in, it automatically generates that work order in iWork. So that's an integration that's on its way. So I think we're doing it better than what I've seen in larger cities and towns. So just the way that we're engaging. I will put this one anecdotal story about something that's happened here. It was brought to our attention about a town employee damaging the skate park in a public meeting. Had happened earlier that day, and we didn't know about it. So I was glad that it came forward. We were able to address it, repaired that week, and appropriate punishment was given as well.
Can I just add to that? The funny part was that was actually the first day of Text My Gov, and we actually did have a citizen who reported it on Text My Gov. That was good.
But I would say that the way that we're reaching out is better than I've seen in most communities. So
I'm not sure what we're fishing for because I think we just answered our question and really did answer it with the additions made. So what are we concerned about? What problem are we trying to solve?
I just want to make sure in the absence of these committees that meet once a month, that people feel like that they can use the existing resources to get a issue in front of Stefan and then potentially in front of us.
and so like the way that these committees had been set up before was very reminiscent of New England. So where there might not be a professional manager in charge, or there might not be daily staff, a daily staff manager that's overseeing everything. And so each trustee was given a department to officially manage. And, in some small New England towns that might work. But of course, you can see that there could be issues where one trustee is operating outside of the norms of, the bounds of, hey, the board operates as a body. And so that could also have been a potential problem. It was very popular in New England, including Pennsylvania, and that's slowly going away. And it was more in the township level, so that's like that very, very first class town level of Pennsylvania, kind of included in unincorporated
Kind of like
areas.
Mayberry.
Yeah, a little bit. So,
Small.
So I'm not sure, I got here late, I'm sorry.
Why don't you get a chair and just come up? Sit right by us, come up. Or sit up here, whatever. Since you're our token citizen. Sorry, Bill, go ahead.
She's our most honors,
Yes, of course.
not token at all.
You're right, you're right.
I think engaging or being available to the citizenry is a very important topic. I think we've got a big uphill battle. I think for the last two administrations, the message has been driven home that you're not really going to be listened to if you come down and talk to the town board. And I think a glaring result of that is that we've got a whole town full of young people here. And Mr. McGregor stepped up, but come this last election, I signed up on the last day because nobody else was doing it. Okay. And I think the first thing we could do would be to take this aggressive conformist, try to control what people say to us when they walk in this room. I mean, right there, it's like, this is our turf. You can speak during visitors and guests. It's like, what kind of an insult is that? These are our constituents. These are the citizens of this town. They are neither visitors nor guests. They live here and we work for them. So, I mean, right there's a huge attitude shift we could make. We could call it constituents time or public comment or something like that, not visitors and guests. And let's put a sign on the wall that says no weapons, and let's let people come to us on their terms and let's try to listen to them. And then when people do write us something, let's have it in the packets. People write stuff all the time. We never see it.
You would like to address that?
so in my experience, it's really inappropriate to have that kind of communication in a packet that's meant to do business. So an agenda item, if it's an agenda item, it means that it's something that the board is going to make action on that evening. If they're going to do a presentation like that, I have never seen email correspondence that have come in unless the board is actually eliciting feedback for like an ordinance change. And they said, that's something, but it's already an agendized item. You're taking public comment. That person can't be present to make that public comment, but they want it to be involved in the record, then be included.
Point taken. In lieu of that, how about if we get email copies?
What do you mean?
I mean, if you get a letter,
Oh,
forward it to the group.
you haven't gotten one yet. So I used to do that. So starting in July, when I get correspondence that would come in, it goes to the entire board of trustees. So I blind carbon copy you. I put my name in the to section. So if you do reply all, it only goes to me. So we're not violating any sort of open records law. And then that way, if you do have a comment about it, I'm getting it, and I can just by following Cora, I can, or those open records laws, I can still send your comments on. So you guys are not, I'm your intermediary. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
And the spirit of things, we shouldn't be bouncing things through you as a way to circumvent Cora. And then you send our comments to other people. You're not going to do that.
No. So it's not a circumvention of Cora. It's a perfectly acceptable best practice.
I agree.
For a council manager from go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I know we're off topic a bit, but if I'm thinking about how to engage the citizenry more, it's like, this is a hard place to do that. Committees are a hard place to do that. But I think like if we decided to do something like coffee with a trustee, where we get to really interact with people, if we got to, so for example, an email that came in before this last election, I'm gonna meet with I think, okay, there's action that needs to be taken on it. So I'm gonna meet with Stefan, get background information and bring it forward as a proposal. Like, I think that these are duties that we as trustees have to have. Like, I don't want to put it all on staff. Like, if there's something that I think is an issue, let me develop something to like work with Stefan, if this makes sense, and then bring it forward to the council. I mean, those are ways like what I don't want to happen, and I'm sure we cannot make these meetings any longer than they already are. We scare really good people away from these really very, very long meetings. And so I want us to be very cautious about that.
And if I could just give background,
Yeah.
not all the trustees, I don't believe they know that you wrote Stefan asking.
Oh, no, because we haven't met yet.
Okay,
About it. So-
what Kathy is referring to is she has something she would like to bring to the board, so she wrote to Stefan and myself saying, how do I go about doing that? And I deferred to Stefan because I didn't have the answer. So Kathy is gonna meet with Stefan to describe what she would like to bring to the board. They're gonna talk about whether it's already in place, whatever.
I'll collect the information that she may need,
And then
we
you'll
can
let
put
me
us-
know.
Right, and then if it needs to go on an agenda, we'll do an agenda staff report and get it on an agenda. So
Because that's not really been the case for the trustees. So I think it's a really good thing. So I just wanted everybody to understand what you're referring to since
Thank you.
that only, so Kathy
I
would
don't
like,
know.
yeah, well, we don't know, I don't know what it is.
But that's not
That's
the point
between
of
the
it.
two of them, and then once they work it out, I will look at it and then, because I'm in charge of the agenda, which is something I didn't really realize. But so then through me, we'll do more discussion as needed and it'll get on an agenda to do, I don't know, I don't know what it is.
But the
So,
point of that is it
and
all
any of
comes
us.
from citizen input that I've gotten,
Mhm,
that I'm like, this is something that we should take action on.
mhm.
And that's what I'm thinking our
Mhm.
roles are, like, how do we take action on things?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah, just,
That was what I brought up at that last meeting, where there was a governmental affairs committee. It was headed up by trustee Pattison, and I don't remember the other trustee because she spearheaded it and took the ball. And there was like, it was things, she was the liaison with the citizens because she heard word on the street and it concerned her. And there was things like the food truck, the ADUs, the issue with the building department, specifically who ran it. And those meetings were packed with people. They knew the specific item, and if it wasn't what they were interested in, it would come up again. So that was really, people were engaged and they were getting answers and they felt like, all this wasn't up on the walls. They got to speak whatever they wanted to. And Michelle took it back to the trustees and everybody knew what was going on. So I also agree with the meeting, Commish, you had also said that you would like to start or see people, trustees each month have coffee with a trustee because people don't like to get up here and talk. And when they do, there's no answers back. It's like a hello, hello, hello. It's not, it doesn't come back. So, and this, hang on, this be nice, be fair is unbelievable how this came to be. This was the result of people standing up week after week going, what is going on? Nobody is doing their job. There is so much malfeasance. There is so much nonfeasance. There is so much questions. People are not administratively following the law. People are getting special preferential treatment and things were not taken care of. And because the citizens every week stood up and like, what is going on? We see it. It was like a Twilight Zone episode.
And I understand some of that, but
This was the result from some trustees actually making a motion. Well, we have to be nice, be fair. No, you guys have to take care of the problems that we're bringing up.
so
And
that was
that's
in the
what this
past,
is.
right?
This is an insult.
That far in the
I'm not
past.
done. So
Sorry.
this is an insult. I'm not done. I'm still not done.
that they are, that's the
Yeah,
whole point.
executive session.
Yes.
I'm
And
still not
this
done.
is exactly the problem.
This is the problem. I'm being nice and I'm being fair, but I'm telling you the thread through of the history, what went on. It was so frustrating to be a citizen. And there were some people didn't read the packets, just showed up knee-jerk, voting, and it's like they didn't see the issues.
But I understand that, but
So
you've alleged that there was some serious criminal activity going on, just in your speech right
I'm
now.
saying malfeasance and non-feasance.
That's serious criminal activity, and we haven't found any evidence of that. It came out of our audit, that
And I know that's
we're getting off the
not,
topic.
yeah, but that's not what Christina
I mean,
means,
I
because
can-
I was in the audience too. And then I was a trustee. And this came up because we were thrown under the bus by the previous administrator, honestly.
Sure.
Citizens would be mad. They would come in looking for us to fix it, and we couldn't fix it because our code did not provide us a fix. So then, I mean, it was raucous. People would watch our videos for entertainment.
I did, you talked me into applying because I watched the video.
Right, so what is coming from Bill and Christina, and I kind of agree, is this sign is, I think it's an anachronism now.
And that's absolutely fine.
Is that hostile?
Yeah,
You see this as hostile?
I do. I do,
unbelievable.
because who is supposed to be nice and be fair?
Everybody.
No, I
And so,
anyways.
okay, can I offer a
Yeah,
suggestion?
yeah.
So the way to like deal with no sign, whatever, is to establish rules of decorum during a meeting, right, and codify it. So it's not just a resolution, but to have an ordinance for rules of decorum. And that doesn't just mean, we're following Robert's Rules of Order, but what's expected of people that come to meetings, and then what's expected of the people sitting at these tables. And I've had that at literally every community I've been in. And I don't think we have rules of decorum here codified.
I don't know if the 2 pages, we have the rules of the meetings,
Right.
but the decorum, there actually is a resolution that's never been finalized. So
Okay.
let's table, if we could, we'll bring that back to life.
Sure.
It never was really approved. We never agreed on it,
Uh-huh.
honestly, so it's out there in a draft form. Go ahead, speak. I mean, you don't have to wait for me. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. To her point about malfeasance and nonfeasance, I heartily agree. And one of my questions for the attorney is the criminal statute that defines malfeasance and nonfeasance is second-degree abuse of office.
You know what? Let's not go there right now, Bill. We're really getting off topic, I feel like. And the reason I say that is we gotta stick with the committees.
Okay, all right, then I'll bring it back around to
Okay,
committees.
thank you.
Okay, all right, I'm going to preamble it a little bit.
Okay.
But I'm concerned because it says if you tolerate malfeasance, you are guilty of malfeasance. Okay, and I believe in my heart, and I will say an official statement as a trustee, that I believe there was lots of malfeasance in the last administration, and I believe there was enough protection of that malfeasance to activate the second part of that statute, that tolerating it is itself malfeasance. Now, the way I'm bringing this back to committees is this, okay? Part of that malfeasance and amazing neglect on the part of Travis Lober, the guy who was the Public Works Director, led to the total degradation of our water and sewer plants, okay? And where the committees come in is if a trustee or trustees had gone and looked at those plants every couple of months, every 6 months, once a year, they would have seen that he was not doing his job. And Corinne, the administrator, was blowing smoke up everybody's, you know what, saying that everything was fine. And what I'm saying about the committees is, I think it's a big mistake. And it's a personality-driven decision to say that that's all in the past. Everything's fine. Business is great. People are wonderful. And we don't need to do any oversight. I disagree. I'm only one vote. Excuse me.
I have
I
a right to
believe.
speak at this table. I can't vote. I have a right.
Yeah,
So,
so I think, Bill, we understand what you're saying, but let's continue to give other people thoughts on where we are now, the 4 committees we have here, and where we can go from here, because I don't have your level of distrust, because I'm been here. So I just want to say, let's look at things a
Because
little
I want
differently.
to, so I want to address something that he was talking about, because I do agree that I can tell you, it's not in good shape. We know that. We've done, we're working to make progress on that. But if there were a committee, an ad hoc as needed committee, it would be assigned with specific duties, right? So those specific duties, let's say for the public works facilities, we would establish a committee that says, we're going to look at public works facilities specifically for the 500,000 gallon plant that hasn't been in operation since like the 80s, right? We take a,
15.
yeah, I'm not talking about that one, I'm talking about the other.
Oh, the 500,000.
Yeah, so we look at that and what to do with it, and that would be a specific task. And then that committee would take receive information and make recommendations to the full board for a decision to move forward. I mean, that's the intent of committees. When you have, the tree board is a completely separate thing. It's been codified. It's got its own authority because the board has decided to delegate that authority to the tree board. Same thing with the planning commission. The board is not the planning commission. They delegated that authority to a body, right? And so those are all codified or statutory boards. Tree board isn't statutory. It's within the Paonia Municipal Code. So there isn't a state statute that says this expressly exists. It's the Paonia Municipal Code that says we're going to have this tree board. And they have their own codified duties that they have to follow, right? What we're talking about with these committees are things that we want to see them do each month, right? Or maybe it's not each month. Maybe it's on an as-needed basis. And, I want to talk about public safety really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Public Safety Committee has been one of those committees that was like listening to the chief, helping with budgeting, and then would ask questions about active investigations. You can't do that. And so we're proposing to change the Public Safety Committee to a rule we want them to be tasked with looking at ordinance changes. How do we enforce things? Maybe there's something that needs to be added. Maybe there needs to be something that needs to be edited or removed. And that's what we're asking the board to think about for this one. So the duty is as needed to look at and research the code. And in this case, we've already identified, we've gotten plenty of emails from residents that talk about off-highway vehicles. So that's golf carts, UTVs, ATVs, and using them on the road. Our code has two separate areas, one for golf carts, one for OHVs. And we think, Matt and I think that moving them together into one code, into one ordinance and codifying it would help with the traffic code, would help with enforcement. And that's what we want that committee to look at. He also added one thing today based on 2 complaints that came in over the last week and a half for parking certain vehicles on roadways, semi-trucks idling overnight on 2nd Street, right? And so our code makes it really hard to enforce. And that's something else that committee would be tasked with, listening to the community and making something that could run past the legal test with our attorney and then be codified. That's it for public safety.
Okay, I'm going to say I love where all this is going. So I really like clarity of things. And so when I was looking at these committees, I thought how great it would be if for every single committee we have the purposes of the committee. Is it advisory? Is it decision-making? Number of committee members, trustees, public, staff, how are they chosen? Length of the, maybe not term is the right word, but whatever, length of the term, I'll just say it. Who leads the meetings, who sets the agendas, frequency of meetings, sections of code that apply. I'm not looking to codify it like we do the tree board, but I think just bringing this clarity so that whoever, if I'm on the personnel committee, for example, it's really clear to me that this is what the expectation is. If I'm a member of the public, this is what the expectation.
Do you like what it says here, or are you being in general? That's all I'm wondering. Because it has the purpose of.
I do.
So I just didn't know if that was enough for that, or you want more.
I like this, and I want to just add some real logistical things, like I liked with the personnel committee. It's very clear who's on it, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to have that be for all of the committees. So then it's just like public knows, oh, do I have a chance to be on this? Do I not? How does it work? It might be too much, but in my mind, it's like, I like that clarity so that there's like, you know what the intention is behind it.
So out of all of these committees tonight, including the tree board, the only one that really should be codified is the personnel committee. So the reason that this one was written that way was because this really ought to be an ordinance and then codified to say this is the personnel committee, because it references our personal handbook and a grievance process. And so like, out of all of them, this one really should be codified,
And you're talking about just the first paragraph of that one,
including membership, you know, what,
Yeah, yeah.
how is it made up?
right? But I mean, that first paragraph would be the constitute what the main goal, the main purpose of the
Yes,
personnel
yes,
committee.
absolutely.
And the other two additional were, what if these were what ifs? The second two parts were the what ifs, if we don't have somebody who can deal with hiring.
Which should also be codified because, you know, it would, you know, it could go into a continuum of operation plan that's needed for like FEMA funding. And so, you know, that's what having that would be there. And when I say FEMA funding, I mean, like, we have a wildfire that wipes out half the town, you know, immediately we can qualify for FEMA funding that usually for like forgivable loans. To date, they've only collected one loan, and it was from Naples, Florida after a hurricane because they paid it early. If they didn't pay their loan off early, they would have been forgiven. So and that's just the way FEMA works. So, but having this would help to go a long way to make that.
So question on this particular statement here. So this empowers the trustees on this committee to make decisions on personnel matters?
Only after so there's 3 steps. Only after the first 2 steps have been gone through in a personal handbook. And then the third step would be to appeal a decision made by myself or a public works director, to appeal that decision then to this board, to this grievance.
So the way that this was before was that these two, and it worked this way, and it was against the rule at the time. When Kurt Madriaga was terminated, the 2 trustees got involved and made decisions. And the way it was written at that time was that they were to observe the issue and bring it back to the board for a decision. And I would advocate for that path because I think it's a mistake to empower trustees as individuals to make decisions that are with consequence for people's lives. I think it should be. I think they should bring it back to the board for decision.
I think that's a legal question.
It would be.
Yeah.
I'm glad we have some interviews this week.
I know we can ask some good questions. Get a range of opinions. You know? Yeah.
Well, not to ask at the interview, but we need an attorney to talk about that.
Ask them a question.
This would be a good time to resurrect the, I will call it, for lack of better words, the Klusmeyer, oh, I just forgot his name, our previous attorney, Nick. Well,
That's a good one.
unbiased. Sometime in June or so, maybe. There was a confidential letter sent out to all the trustees in so many words saying, you guys are way out of line. And it reined us in. And if I remember correctly, and I don't have to be terribly accurate right here because we can resurrect that and you know, show everybody. It said basically that all this management and decision-making and all that kind of stuff needs to be reined in. It's in violation, and that what we should do, just like the board should set policy, is the committees should only address things that they're tasked with. Do you remember this?
Yeah, now
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
not tracking with you at
Sure.
all, but now I remember.
Okay. Should only deal with things that are tasked by the board of trustees, and then do that one particular narrow thing and make recommendations to the board. Otherwise, we're out of line. And we were out of line. We were just doing all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
So that I think would add some clarity, and it would sort of define what we're doing. And it does limit the committees to what they're legally allowed to do. So, the reason I'm mentioning this is I'm hearing that we're kind of talking about expanding.
I mean,
Not expanding, no, so this is, the personnel committee is very specific in our personnel handbook that there will be this personnel liaison group and they make decisions on grievances. And this is a normal practice that you have, you normally have like the mayor and a council member serving on a grievance board with the town or city manager. And that's that third step. So typically a second step is the director of that department would make those decisions after it's been through a supervisor, or in the case of supervisor, it's gone to the public works director or any director. But since we don't have anything like that, it makes it really difficult. And because this is a personnel matter, it's somewhat confidential. And so to bring any recommendations back for like the full board, it has to be done in executive session or a public hearing, right? Because any decision that comes out of executive session has to go out and be made public. Whereas this personnel liaison group, if it were given very specific, very set parameter, right? That's very set specific duties as it relates to the personnel handbook. It can operate in that way and hear grievances and then make decisions. It would either like overturn a punishment or a disciplinary or impose tighter, or more stringent disciplinary actions. So
yeah, and I just want to say, because this specifically just gives 3 types of things that could come before this committee: suspension, demotion, or dismissal. So, that was the point of this, that it would have to be elevated, and they're not satisfied with Stefan, who was the last word for the staff. So that's why that is the way it is there.
So if we're going to have this personnel committee, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a big hole in our personnel committee or the handbook, whatever we call it. Is there a mechanism for a complaint against the administrator?
Mhm.
There is.
Mhm.
Can you describe it briefly?
it goes through a personnel liaison group,
Which is this.
It's never been codified. It's never been.
Right, and that's exactly what I'm saying, is that should be involved in here too, because I personally was involved in a big knockdown, drag out lawsuit that the town lost miserably because there was a complaint against the administrator, which was credible enough to get the board's involvement, but he was never heard of it. He was railroaded terribly. And so, yes, I think if there is a mechanism to hear, a fair mechanism to hear a complaint, that's good. And I think that should be that group. I think as far as having them make decisions to overturn or turn the thumb screws more, I think you might as well grab 2 people off the street and give them $50 to swear to keep it secret and have them make the decision. I mean, who are we as trustees? We're just people off the street that for some reason fought our way onto this board, It doesn't mean that we have any wisdom or background that we should be making these kind of decisions. I think it should come, if we have to go to executive session and to have a public hearing, if that's what we gotta do.
You've never worked HR. I've supervised so many people. I have done HR. What you're saying is just awful. Like,
What?
this is our role. This is our role as trustees. We've been elected. I mean, just bring people in off the street to approve their financials, to look at the audit. I mean, you could say that about anything, Bill. That is absolutely asinine. This is our.
Oh, is it now? Let's have some decorum here.
Let her
Is that what we-
Let her speak.
Wait, everybody, let's take
This
a
is a
moment.
really, this is a policy. This is not making things up.
I agree. it
This
should
is
be
what,
codified.
we just need to get this
But a
codified.
concrete example is that we had an HR expert
Mhm.
in here making decisions that he wasn't supposed to make.
Which is
because
why
he
we're
wasn't
doing this.
The HR expert.
We're trying to fix the.
Sorry.
Issue.
Right, because there were some decisions that.
Let's move on.
Yeah, and there were some decisions that were made that I'm like, what in the world? But we do have this in our personal handbook. We require every employee to sign that personal handbook when they come to work with us. But we have failed. We have failed by not having a personnel liaison group ready to go. No, it's not that we also haven't had any grievances, but to say that we're gonna do it as a grievance comes up, that's doing a disservice to everyone that works for us. So I think by having this ready to go, and yeah, it does need to go to an attorney, right? To say that this is acceptable, this is what we need to do, but at the same time, these personnel matters can be seriously tricky waters.
I agree.
And so if something were to come out of it and we didn't have a grievance process in place to hear those grievances, and let's just say we did an executive session, came out and made it public, man, our liability would go through the roof because of personnel issues, just by the nature of personnel matters. And so even the tree board should have been codified. I'm sorry, it should have been codified. At least all of the duties should, it just, we should have been like, we have a tree board and here's how we're going to make it out. But this, we should have codified. We should have a way of addressing grievances that come before, you know,
management.
Yeah. And yeah, our personnel policy does talk about if a department head has an issue with a decision that I've made for discipline, you know, and has already gone through all of those steps, you know, then they have a way to come back to this grievance, this personnel committee to state their grievance. And this is you see a lot of this. If we don't have one, and let's say our guy is unionized, the public works department decided to unionize, very first thing in their contract would be they want this. They want some sort of grievance mechanism. So we're trying to be ahead of the ball. And in the past, I've seen the personnel handbook, it needs work. It's on my list of things to do because I've seen where there are some things that aren't very clear. And then there are some things that I certainly wouldn't have in a personnel handbook to try to dictate to employees what they ought and ought not be doing, you know, in their personal time. Not as representatives of the town, but in their personal time. No, yeah, if they get convicted of a felony, that we need to know that, you know, we should know that, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking what they do in their leisure activities. Should be in a personal.
So it's under modification.
It needs to.
And it comes back to us.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we'll
Yeah.
see it, all the changes to it.
Since these topics come around so rarely, what do you think of needing someone's okay from the town to take on a second job?
I think that's outside the scope of this work. Let
I just
that
wanted
be
to
in
throw
the.
Yeah,
let
we'll
me
see
look
that.
at-
I will tell you this, I will look at it for conflicts. Because I mean, people do have second jobs, but if they're gonna, you know, I want to address it real quick. So if they're going to take on the meter reading for a water company, absolutely not. That is
That's
an
happened
inherent,
in the past.
I know, and so that is an inherent conflict of interest that should never exist.
So we should have a line about that.
We have a person, yeah, and that is in our personnel policy. It wasn't,
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I have a quick question about this exact thing. You said it will be comprehensive for suspension, demotion, and dismissal. But could it also incorporate like issues that are not being handled internally like well? Because that was the issue with that gentleman, Kurt, who basically was a whistleblower for things that really were so egregious.
that is something that's missing from our personnel policy is a robust whistleblower policy.
Yes.
And so that should be in our handbook. It will come in the new one. But this is really to hear, if it's a whistleblowing activity, that's like, that when it comes to me, that's something I need to know about. And so that's protected. I'm a whistleblower. I've been a whistleblower. I'm currently involved in a lawsuit as a whistleblower. And so, and that's, you all knew about that. So I have a certain affinity for people that want to bring forward things that are issues that need to be addressed. And there will be a provision for that that's more robust in the personnel policy. But this committee, and to be clear, the suspension, demotion, and dismissal is after they've already exhausted the other two steps to get to that point. And so that means I've already upheld the decision, and they still don't like that decision. You know, then the group with me
so
decide
they're final.
correct. It gives a layer of protection, so we're not sued all the time, right? Yeah.
So when that whistleblower got fired, he got fired for letting his licenses lapse, water,
ORC?
yeah,
Licenses?
he had that. And he protested because they hadn't lapsed, and so they just The trustees just gave him a pink slip that said, you're fired.
How could the trustees, I mean, that's just,
They were the committee. So they got rid of the whistleblower. They just told him, you're fired.
well, I would hope that this would be robust and done professionally, and you see both sides, because you have to see both sides. I've been on one of these committees on a board I was on.
Yeah.
And you have to talk to both sides and listen to both sides and then talk amongst yourselves.
And just so you guys are aware, you haven't seen it yet, but we did have, of course, we've had personal issues since I've been here. And I've kept the board abreast of what was going on, including letters that were sent to, employees that specific discipline was being taken, and why things were happening. So you'll see them if they come up. I don't keep them from you guys.
So my point of all this is that we need institutional integrity here, and we're short on it. And so whatever we do, I think we should look more at a policy for the future when we don't know who the personalities involved are going to be. And the time to start with that is now, when we do have personalities that we trust. But we need to have the institution in place so that when it goes bad, and it will, that it's not, oh my gosh, well, we don't know, we don't know how to deal with that.
The whole point of this.
Right.
Really,
It's a start.
And perhaps this committee should also review edits to the personnel handbook as they're made before it goes to the body for adoption. And maybe that's a good duty as on an ad hoc basis to review that. I plan to do it with my department heads as we move forward, and then washing that through the rank and file as we move along. That way
it's kind of going to be done already.
it's going to be done, but
You've got a staff person also.
oh, that's right. Yeah. And that's what our handbook says to do this, staff person as well.
So-
Bill, I really appreciate that comment. I feel like so much of what's being done right now, so much of the policy work, like the procedure manuals, the handbook, like this, it's like, we're trying to you have to put those systems in place. And then it's like up to us as trustees, like, okay, if the system isn't being followed, we, citizens, like, yeah, call us on that. Like, but it's like, we gotta have like
You get,
those things, pardon?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
But we gotta have those procedures and those policies in place so that it's not nebulous. And that's why I'm so excited about what's happening in town, because I love these things. It's like, this is how you make a town solid.
Exactly.
This is how you make it.
No knee jerk.
Yeah.
No
And so
reactivity.
that's what, like, I'm just thrilled that you're working on these things, because, yeah, we don't want to be knee jerk, and we gotta have clarity.
Well, and it's not just, this has been a whole team effort, not just with our board, but also with our staff, right? And so every one of our department heads has been really, they want to have a defined set of ways to deal with, issues as they come up. And that's what the procurement policy, the very first section is an ethics section. I mean, we've never had one. It says, if your brother-in-law is one of the bidders on a construction project, you're not grading them, you're not scoring them. And so that, it's silly, but it's been done here.
It's not happening.
Yeah. So there's an ethics statement of procurement policy that will come to you guys soon. I'm working on it.
But no, that's good. And these are all good things to hear, because it's exactly what we need. We have to know what everyone needs to know. This is the expectation. This is how we're going to do business. And to your point you made from Nick's letter is, let's see exactly why parks and public safety are scaled back considerably. Because it gets down to being asked to work on a specific topic by the board, not the way things were, which was just it was way overreach, in my opinion, what these two committees, and, it took staff time and it took trustee time, and so with that in mind.
So this evening, we're just agreeing on this markup on the various committees, and since this personnel.
And that, well, we can't make any decisions tonight because no motions or anything.
Right, but-
So really it was more, what do you think? And then it could be brought to,
If you want to add things, let us know, we'll add them. So
I just wanted to tell you, I do have a placeholder on the agenda for May 14th, if you guys want to have a more formal conversation about what you guys come up with from here. But that can also be moved to a later meeting if you need more time. So,
Thank you. And then the finance committee is relatively prescriptive too. Because that's all part of the good governance oversight. And I had mentioned maybe the new trustee taking over, but I'm gonna stay on as finance. So Kathy and I will be finance, since I already have done it. And then,
Well, you've cleaned it all up.
yeah, well,
So you should stay on.
I mean, I can't say that I've cleaned it all up, but I've certainly asked the question.
You have. You've created best practices. So that's.
Well, anyway, I have to give credit to previous people too,
Fair enough.
but it's a really good thing. And so again, I don't know, I mean, there might be things that we missed for the finance committee or you'd like to see added, which could, you have any
I
discussion.
have a question, and maybe this is a personnel committee or maybe it's a finance committee. But I was thinking about payroll and what process, is there or maybe it's a troll trustee thing, but I don't think that would be, but how do we review all the pay to make sure that it's fair and equitable? Like that if there's any glaring, like, like just glaring oversights, like, is that a role of the trustees or the finance committee or of the personnel committee?
So budget time, that's when we start looking at those things. We do our salary studies. I just reported about a month ago to the Colorado Municipal League our existing payroll, and we're on target for a lot of our positions, except for roles like honestly the trustees and the mayor's wages are lower than a lot of the state as well. But like our licensed folks, those people in public works that have licensure, boy, we've got to step that up. So that's one of the things that came out. But as far as making sure pay is equitable, that's something that would come out through a strategic planning process before our budget is put together.
Okay.
So I have a comment on that. This was one of the what I think was glaring errors going on when we had an HR professional involved in the personnel committee before, was that he was here from the board being a very strong advocate to way increase the budget for town staff. And from my perspective as a citizen is that the town staff is more than capable of advocating for their own wages. And that the advocacy that I saw coming from this guy, I thought was, wages are always going up, but the wages paid at the time were more than the town had usually paid. And I felt like he was doing a disservice to the taxpayers by trying to raise the wages from the board side, regardless of whatever was coming from the staff asking for a raise. It's just my perception. I think there's, when you're sitting on this side of the table, you've got a responsibility to try to not spend all the money you can. You got physical responsibility is an important thing. So I just throw that out as to contrast what I've seen happen in the past.
I like that there's wage studies. Like, to me, it's like there's data. This isn't a subjective thing. And that's what I really like is like objective wage studies. Like, where are we falling? Are we on the low end? Are we on the high end? Right in the middle? Like, that's what, I just want to make sure someone is looking at that.
Well, Stefan's going to be, that's his job. That's what that gets back to management of personnel. That's his job.
So
one of the needs more money, he'll tell us.
So one of the things that I know you three saw them during budget time, but you'll see is my massive spreadsheet to show what each employee actually costs the town, because it takes into consideration their wage, insurance, cell phone allowance, if they've gotten overtime. It goes, what we pay in SUDA, what we pay for Medicare or that tax, what we pay over the lifetime of the employee for that entire fiscal year. So you'll see that's something that I don't think you've I really put that spreadsheet together for previous towns because I wanted to understand what we were paying. Because it came in easier when I went to negotiate with employees for wage increases, because guess what? Health insurance premiums also go up. And so typically we split, and that's what we did this past year. We split the costs of those health insurance premiums so we can see so employees to go, hey, this is what you're actually costing the taxpayer in the town. And that's why, and we're also contributing more to this increase in health insurance. That's why your wage didn't go up as high as you wanted it to. No, and so it's a really good tool.
And what I want to say is everything you're saying is so good that when we start budget, if you would say that when we're all in a public meeting about it, because it's always been this black box. And I just wanted to add, this is sort of off topic for the personnel committee, but CML does this 500-page table that you all will see. And we extract out the jobs that pertain to us and figure out the towns that are comparable, but you can see what other comparable towns are paying. And it's an incredible tool.
Yeah, and I just uploaded that data like a month ago.
So
the issue was some of the duties I had to, because we've got like a sergeant that's also doing extra police duties that aren't normal for a sergeant. So I had to add those in, and then because it didn't match up with what the rest of these communities were reporting on, because he had additional duties and it was paid way less. So, those are some things that come up as well.
So we'll be a lot more sophisticated for this next budget season.
We have never seen that before.
Oh, that's a shame. It's been around for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So
What you're talking about?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
So it'll be there for everyone to see, which is again why the personnel committee is so scaled back so it's not so nebulous. And
but to your point, I will advocate for employees for wages. That's my job. Keeps them from grievances.
It's your job to make sure they're getting paid right. It's not too much, not too much.
That's right.
One of the other things that came to light, I believe, after some previous employees left, was that the police evidence locker was a travesty. I would suggest that the Public Safety Committee should poke their nose around and look at what's going on. And I really believe there should be a committee that makes occasional inspections of the facilities.
could I throw something out about that?
Sure, because there's some post things that.
Yeah, because we are supervising the chief of police and we need to we've never done, the trustees haven't been doing that routinely, and we're now we are doing it now. So we're going to have to talk about our role with the chief of police and how we're going to. So anyway, hold off on all that.
There's a question. It's good for the house, good for the
Well,
right?
I'm afraid we're so going off topic that nobody else gets to hear it.
I know, but
It's all
Laura,
kinds of
These are
stuff.
so good. So when our police chief took over office, there were thousands of open cases going back decades. And so what he has tasked his officers with doing when they're not out actively patrolling, what he's got his sergeant doing is closing those cases. So it could be as simple as court date was held on this day, case closed. Some of them, though, have been, now we're trying to find where the police department has gotten evidence, and it's up in that evidence locker, and that case is now closed. Well, the victim is.
What's their stuff?
It's their stuff, and they don't know that they have, a German Luger from 1940.
Bolt cutters of mine.
Right, and they want it back, and so that's what they're doing is they're trying to get that evidence back to the victims, or at least their surviving families, and so that they are actively working at closing cases. And what I can get Matt to do is start putting those cases in his police report, his monthly report, so that you guys can see that they've actively closed 200 cases since January, whatever it is. That's something we can do.
So have we changed our administrator's ordinance? Because it very clearly puts the administrator in charge of the police.
That was changed.
When the current was the administrator.
Yes.
And there's conflicting ordinance. So does that still say that there? And then the administrator recommends the hiring of the chief to the trustees. So there's conflicts.
Yeah, that's a cockamamie
Yeah,
statement.
But that's what we use to be able to be more involved with hiring Matt. when that came around, I just want to tell you.
Okay, but that's not supervising.
No, it's not. And we
And,
will,
and until, it's the administrator's ordinance that sets out the duties. The last time I read it, it was pretty clear to me that the administrator was in charge of the police. And I recall when the administrator's husband was elevated to chief, the mayor had to take over its supervision of the police. And so I'm very curious though, statutorily,
It's still in effect.
how the board now is to supervise the police. This is something I've noticed in the organizational chart, and it's one of my questions. What's going on here?
So your the town administrator did keep that where that change where the mayor and board supervised the police chief, did keep that in place. I've been in two, I've done it both ways. The only difference was in Indiana when the town marshal, not a police chief, the town marshal reported to the town council was because that marshal had arresting powers outside of the jurisdiction of the town. They had statewide arrest powers, and it was statutory by Indiana code. In Colorado, it's not the same thing. And so if it follows CRS or not, I don't know. Either way, if I manage the police chief or if the board manages the police chief, that's a question for Matt. I don't think he'd care either way. He just wants to come get his job. So.
and I wonder if that's an attorney question.
Sure would be.
It's, yeah.
And then on that same line, it's like, is he appointed or not? He's been appointed by the board, but he's not on the list of appointees, and he was specifically removed from that in the past. Not he, but the chief.
Yeah,
He's not on contract, he's staff.
he is staff.
You're the only contract. I am. No.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah,
Unless you're an attorney, like the town attorney, another office should be
yeah.
contract.
So that's another thing that
I
we're
just
gonna
say
have to do.
one thing, on that very first facilities tour, we toured through the whole shop there and into the locker and into where they keep all the armaments and everything. So I don't know if we're having that on the 15th tour, but
I don't know if the evidence locker would be, so that was an egregious violation of CJIS, which is the Criminal Justice Information System. It should never have happened.
That we got in there.
Yes. I have to take, so in order to even get police reports on active investigations, I have to be CJIS certified. I take that training to keep that updated, and Matt knows that, so he's implemented some things.
Okay, but at least, no problem, but at least everybody can see where the police are during that tour on the 15th, which of course I really recommend everybody go on. See
We
the
don't
water.
want to,
the
we don't want
sewers.
to our post status.
Yeah, but anyway, it's really good to see everything.
stay on the tour.
Right. We'll just go in there. So I guess, how do people, do you want to, we can't make it, does anybody want to try to make any written suggestions for what you have in front of you for discussion at a meeting? Are you good with what's here for a future meeting? We can't decide on anything. I'm just trying to see how y'all feel.
After reading it, I thought the markup was good for these 3-page, 4-page committees. So, yeah, I think we ought to go with the markups that are here. I haven't thought of anything that needs to be added myself, except maybe for suggestions for personnel.
For financial quick,
Oh, yeah.
because I don't think we have done that.
We
yet.
haven't, no, we have not specifically picked that up and looked at it.
And I think one of the things that needed to be added that we did add in this draft was that we don't just follow GAAP. We follow a completely specific set of rules from GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board. And so I think that was something that really needed to be involved with this committee, is inclusion of that, because there's different provisions on how we account for things that is very different from GAAP. And it's because we have, we operate on a budget, right? It's a line item budget that you cannot go over because it has serious implications for the taxpayer. And so that's what GASB is very specific to, and that's why I think it needs to go into this as well. And so that was one of the additions. As far as, some of the other things that we do as far as town expenses, adopting the annual budget, some of the things that we struck out were because you're now getting budget to actuals by month. That's part of transparency. It's part of being open with the public to show where it's our checkbook essentially, is we're showing them what where their money's going, what we're spending money on. And it's going to improve over time to the point where I won't have to manually look at Cassell and put into what I present. We've almost dialed in the Cassell reporting, so I just have to push a button. It's going to save so much time, and then it'll spit out that report.
Can it spit that out as a spreadsheet?
It's a spreadsheet that
Does you have an export Excel?
it doesn't export to Excel. It exports to like a comma delimited file.
Yeah.
And then, but the actual, no, not the budget to actual. The budget to actual does not do it in a spreadsheet. The budget to actual does it in PDF. Because what we're looking at is literally our general ledger. It's our book of record. And we don't want somebody to print it off and then make changes to our book of record, even though it's not in our system, but it's presenting it.
I've heard that before.
I could show you.
Doesn't hold water. That fear doesn't hold water to me. It's like, so what if they changed it? It's not our books.
I understand that, but as far as getting it to come out as any sort of way, I'd have to ask Cassell to do a code, code it so that it would do it in a different way. And I don't, there would be a charge for that. I don't know what that is, but it spits that report out as a PDF.
If you want transparency, I think this day and age, you need a spreadsheet. I want a
What do you
spreadsheet.
mean, what are you looking for in the spreadsheet? I'm just trying to understand what you like to see.
I would like to be able to, okay. I was handed a thumb drive once from a previous administrator and told that there was some funny stuff in there. I didn't know what to look for, but I found plug numbers in the spreadsheet that where you add the columns this way, and in order to make it come out right, there was a cell that was supposed to be a result from other cells that was a number that made it work. Okay.
Oh, I think I understand what you're talking about. So you're talking about an Excel spreadsheet that's standalone, not part of our very secure, it's a very secure general ledger.
Yeah, so you put out a report and it's a PDF of the spreadsheet. Why can't I have that as a spreadsheet?
No, that's not I got to show you our finance stuff. I think you'd understand because it's its own system.
Sure.
Right. And so in that system, it's not Excel workbooks. It is a piece of software that's been expressly made for the town. And it has our fund. It has
I'll
our
come
fund
in and
accounts.
show it.
Yeah, I think you'd understand exactly that we don't use Excel other than for
I realize that.
Yeah.
I think there's got to be an export comment eliminated file.
the only way I've seen export into like a CSV or TXT has been for utility billing. And that's so that we can import it into our bill.
I'll come in and use it.
I'll show you.
We can talk.
Okay.
Okay.
If that happens, I'd love to join you on that.
I was wondering if maybe you and I could get as a
Oh,
finance committee,
yeah.
because, so we don't have to have a public meeting. So
Oh,
if
that's
there was
true.
more of us,
Yeah.
then,
For finance, I'll
yeah,
show
for
you.
finance.
I'll show you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then show anyone else what we don't have to.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking you and I need to
Unless
show.
it's something that the community could benefit from, like, I think about transparency, like if you're gonna
Could it be done projected?
I could. The only issue that I have with doing that is I need a hard plug, because when I tried to do this and also share my screen, it crashed a couple of times. And I guess maybe if I did it for my office, you just wouldn't have to be out here.
Yeah.
Do it that way.
I think that would be
like
so
that.
helpful. I mean,
For everybody to see it,
trustees,
yeah.
the community, like, if we're gonna get like transparency, like, understand how like powerful this tool is that we have.
Yeah, because we only got spreadsheets before, Excel spreadsheets, but they were pretty.
But they weren't spreadsheets, they were PDFs.
Well, no, we didn't see the active spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I did. No, I didn't. I got PDF. Anyway, yeah, that would be great.
Because I mean,
You couldn't,
you know, one other thing as far as the personnel committee goes, back when Kristen Chesnick was hung for all the money that went missing, there were committees, and there was a finance committee. The finance committee they knew something was going on, and they didn't ask the right questions. And there were other people on the board who wanted to ask those questions, and they were told, no, you're not on that committee, keep your nose out. And again, just as far as institutional integrity, that's a problem we've had. And I think that we should engineer our oversight to avoid that problem in the future, where you've got a finance committee, and that means it's nobody else's business. You can't ask questions.
That's
So,
never how I've operated.
yeah, it's like I say, just as an institutional practice, I think we need to be aware of these kind of pitfalls that may come up and try not to design them back into the system.
Yeah, so one of the things that the finance committee will this be your first finance committee actual like go through?
Yes.
So one of the things that they'll see are real reports printed based on the accounts payable that's done for this period. And it's not something that I generate. I literally push a button that says go, it's green, and it does it for me. And so I can't make any manipulations to it whatsoever. If I do, it's registered. If I do any sort, and I don't do anything within any of our books, that's all Michelle Duran. The only thing I do is after disbursements are done, I literally press a green button that says go, and it makes those postings. If there's any changes between those ledgers that has to happen, it goes through Michelle and we paper trail it. So there's notes that are done, it requires comments, and it tells you why something went out of water and water utility and went into the police department's utility line item. And she'll probably say miscoded, should have been police department. And so we'll show that debit credit. So nothing, what you'll see is this whole spreadsheet that has that lists all of our invoices, the account numbers it goes to, the amounts it needs to go to, based on those accounts, that a total, and then you'll read that invoice to make sure everything balances.
and we look at every invoice and check to see, and then everything is allocated. So Morgan and I, I mean, we're seeing, and what I like about it is we know a lot about what's going on with the town, because we're seeing where the money's being
I
spent.
mean, the system even shows that I misprinted 16 checks because they got out of sequence. And so then I had to void every one of those checks to reprint them, and the system keeps them. They say this was this check, it was printed on this, it was mismatched. Boy, it was such a pain in the butt, but it catches everything. So you can't delete something. That doesn't exist. I mean, I can like we could delete a vendor. You can delete a vendor out of there but they have to have been there's like a retention period. So if you try to delete a vendor that it hasn't been terminated in the system yet for like whatever that amount, let's say it's 6 years, you can't delete it. But after that's done, you can run a report that says clean up vendors that haven't been used in such and such time, whatever that parameter is, and it cleans it up, gets rid of those vendors. One of them that's going to go away soon is SGM, because they're in there twice. SGM changed their name, and so that old vendor is eventually going to go. It's going to time out and it can be removed, but that new vendor, their new name, their appropriate name and vendor number will stay.
And everything that was under SGM will be
Under SGM.
Yeah. Under the, what are they changing their name to?
They were in our system for the actual spelling of SGM and whatever, it's like Schuster or whatever, the actual name for the acronym. And that was changed to be SGM Inc. I'm assuming it's because they ran out of space on a check when you try to write that full name. So,
So one thing that would be helpful as a new finance committee member is to, maybe we already have this, but to detail those processes so that they live long after, like if you left and, we don't have Morgan here, like, I want to have that process written down so I know, so any trustee knows what is expected of them.
so that's something we can do. I can tell you, Ruben has an incredible manual that he's made himself for the back end of accounts payable, the uploading of invoices into the, by the way, we have all of our invoices digitized, and we're working on digitizing every single ordinance and minutes, so that they can be quickly recalled. Needs to happen. Then our next step is building permits. I was in the middle of that before this meeting. But we're working on so all those, since October of last year, every invoice that has come into the town has been digitized. It's saved in a digital vault, and it's easily recalled within our system. So if I want to know what was spent in November of last year for utility bills at the wastewater plant, I can pull it up to see what that actual bill was. And we've never, from DMEA, and we've never done, we have boxes and boxes of invoices that we quite honestly don't need if we digitize them, and they're in a digital vault. So we're working on that system as well.
Yes.
But he created this wonderful manual that shows how to do all of those steps with screenshots and pictures. So that's going to be very helpful.
And so that might be one of our tasks, if it's not already written down somewhere, like, let's write it down. That way it's like people know. Like,
Or either that or be able to use, until we see his book. It
That's
could
true.
be
Maybe it's
standalone.
included in that. So.
We'll look at it, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about any more on the finance?
No, I think that the procurement policy, once that's all set in stone and is, I would say it would be, an ordinance would be passed that says the town shall have a procurement policy that follows these general criteria, and then the procurement policy manual set by resolution as may be needed from time to time. I think that will go a long way into really bolstering our internal controls so that when it's time to go to an audit, I can just say, go to ordinance section so-and-so, and they can see what our internal controls policies are. Instead of trying to siphon through and go, here's a piece that was resolution, and here's something that was codified, because that's, now thank God I've got a folder that has everything ready to go, so I just send it, and worksheets are there. The one thing that we did talk about was number 8, was all other duties deemed necessary by the auditor. And we removed audit team because Paige and I had no clue, and Mayor and I had no clue what the audit team was. And we don't know why that ever existed. So we said by the auditor, town administrator, treasurer, and or board of trustees that are needed to maintain proper controls.
So we'll learn a lot about audits. I've learned a lot. I still don't understand them, but I've learned a lot more than I knew.
I had never done the work of an MD&A before until this last audit. Normally I just review it, make sure everything matches. This actually made worksheets. So
That's the descriptor.
that's the thing that explains what you're seeing in every one of the ballot, or in all of the financial statements.
It's a little bit more English than finance ease.
It is until you get to capital assets. And then
Yeah,
it's,
and then,
it's
well,
pretty,
maybe we can have a capital assets 101 when we get
sure.
to budgets.
I found a module that we're not using for assets in Cassell that we will begin using after I get fully staffed. We'll start putting in what was in the SGM report for town assets, and we can start depreciate. It automatically depreciates them. So I don't have to do anything. You just add it, set it, you put in what it is, what department it belongs to, the useful life of that, the estimated useful life of that, what a truck, whatever it is, and then it auto depreciates it out. It's so much more robust than what we've been using it for. I found that module by chance, so we already had it.
I feel really good about where we're at, and I would feel comfortable if these are brought forward at the next meeting, or 2 meetings, or whenever that would be. I think this has been a really productive, good discussion.
Mhm.
It's your agenda.
Yeah, and I'll get with Sam and we'll put together an agenda item for discussion and approval at that meeting potentially, or, we might get some more input that we want to continue it, but we'll get it on. I don't know how much is on the 14th yet, but we'll definitely get it in front of us. And then Sam also made a copy of the resolution concerning activities of committees. Oh, because getting back to you, Kathy, you wanted to make it clearer in here that it's two trustees that are kind of self-appointed. Because it's really up to the board of trustees to choose who they'd like to be on the committees, and usually somebody volunteers and nobody else volunteers, and then they get on. But what we had done is there were 3 major committees, and there were at least 2. Every trustee was on a committee. That's what I'm trying to say. And we try not to have to double trustees up on committees. And in this case, there are 4 committees coming out of this. You and I are already one, so probably you and I shouldn't necessarily be on another one because ours is pretty time intensive. So that's just.
Honestly, I'd like to be on the personnel committee.
Well, you have to be chosen.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. I totally knew that.
No, I'm not. I am not the chooser. The personnel committee is not, the mayor's on it, but then the staff will choose the trustee rep and their own personal rep, their staff rep. So,
Yeah.
Forgive me,
I said anything.
But that's
No,
good.
people know.
Yeah, no, but that's good you said it. Because so anyway, it's been pretty ad hoc about just trying to make it even for people's time. So in this case, we
Mayor,
are,
if I could, we also have 2 more codified boards, the plan commission where Bill serves and the board, or the tree board where John serves. So
yeah.
And the Board of Appeals.
that's right. One of you, I think one of you will be appointed to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Oh, does it have to be one of
Right,
the
Board of Appeals.
trustee members of isn't it just a member of the planning commission, not an ex
No.
officio?
Just a member of the planning commission, and it was Steve Lissette.
Yeah, it didn't have to be a
Commission
elected.
and on the zoning board.
It's not an elected.
Doesn't have
It
to.
doesn't have to be.
So that's something you guys would do during your next meeting.
Okay, anyway, so, anyway, there's a resolution that was put in place about boards. Oh, I know when I brought it up. Well, this will have to be updated because there's more committees in this resolution than we have. And, so Kathy, from your perspective, you were looking for a little bit more clarity.
This is so helpful.
Is that, okay,
Yes.
so can that stand alone, or would you like more content
No,
in the board committee duties?
I think this could stand alone, and even if it's just like a link to it somewhere, like in these descriptions, that way if anybody sees it, boop, they could just click link.
Yeah. So. And where do these committee duties reside? Have they ever resided anywhere in our electronic system?
They have not, but they can reside in the website.
They have actually been residing on Muni Docs ever since they were passed last year.
Oh, this resolution.
Yeah, the one that I just.
But I mean, the committee duties.
Oh, now that one, because it kept getting pushed off to the side, they haven't lived anywhere that I know of.
Would that be good to put with the list of trustees or something? I don't know. I'll let you all figure out.
We can add it to the website pretty easily.
You put it wherever you want it.
Can I ask a quick question? So the parks and the public safety are just gonna meet as needed, both of those? Not gonna do regular meetings, yeah?
I think you guys have decided some pretty good tasks for them, so.
That's the intent. To not make them regularly in.
Could it be maybe something that could be clear? Maybe it's here and I don't know it yet. Forgive me, Sam, I know you'll correct me if I'm missing something, but who would call the meeting? Like who sets the agenda? Are we keeping minutes? Like, I just want that clarity. So it's like, okay, if it's clear that, I'm gonna use you, John, you're sitting right here. If John's leading up this committee, he's the one responsible.
He can parks and public safety.
Yeah, exactly. That's what would like a little bit of clarity. So we just know, okay, there's an issue. We want to take it to committee, have them bring back to trustees. I'd like that to be a bit more defined.
could that be defined when they're given the task, I wonder? If once the task is handed out? Because at this point, we have created 2 tasks already, but they're not, haven't been approved. If Sam and then.
If you don't mind me putting in, I would also like it to be clarified, because it was a little bit of a sticking point with the last ones. We have so many official boards that we have to do the agendas and track all of that stuff for, and then since a lot of it was coming from citizen, it's easier if the committee are the ones who are setting what they're gonna be talking about and they're providing notes or minutes afterwards.
Go ahead, Bill, you had your hand.
Well, I think that it's gotta be that the committee can call its own meeting. Or they could be assigned to have a meeting, and whether that's from the board or the staff or both.
I think, so,
It should be the board that asks them to meet.
yeah, I agree with that. So I think maybe you guys decide we're establishing these committees together on an ad-hoc basis, and then you charge them with organizing themselves. So you have somebody who's a chair, vice chair, and, the chair or vice chair doesn't have to be one of the trustees. It could be anybody that's made up of that committee. But as far as agendas and minutes,
Here's what I'm thinking, because they're being asked to do a specific thing, that's something I see, like when you and I were hiring the administrator, you and I just went and did the work. And then when we could report back, we have put out this many ads. Because it seems like if John and Walter are looking at the OHV issue, you're gonna kind of be doing homework. I'm thinking you're gonna be like talking and then getting on the computer and looking at the statute and looking at the code.
the good news is I have a template. We just have to change the Florida statute or the Indiana code to the Colorado revised statute.
Well, there you go.
But how do you bring in citizens? though?
Well, no,
That doesn't
I'm
work.
not saying that they do. I'm suggesting that they do the homework. And then they have in this case, they're coming up with an ordinance. And the ordinance they'll come in front of the public after it's gone to the trustee, to the administrator and the attorney, because these are kind of internal things that we're trying to make a policy. And it's not like you want.
So the question is, do you want the sausage, how the sausage is made to be seen? Or do you want the draft ordinance that's gone through the attorney for legal sufficiency to be the first thing that comes out of that committee?
And that's what I was envisioning by very prescriptive duties, but because you almost have to be able to think and just be in your homework zone, like we were.
And one of the things I haven't seen with ordinances here in the town is I'm typically seeing like introduced by, trustee Valentine, or introduce, whoever's introducing that ordinance would have that. Now, I see that as coming out of the committees. Who's ever on the public safety committee would be introduced by those 2 trustees to show that they've, this isn't just something that was willy-nilly, trustees actually took time to look at this code or this draft ordinance and then present it to the full board. We don't do that. I mean, I haven't seen where they're introduced by, so
You might
it's
be
a good practice, so.
I don't think that's ever happened here.
Yeah, I don't feel like it doesn't. I mean, the mayor has introduced things as the agenda setter, but yeah, that's why I say like your email that was kind of like, hey, I'd like to introduce something. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, so whatever, if let's say it comes out and becomes an ordinance or a draft of an ordinance, it would say introduced by, trustee Kathy Swartz. And, that's a normal way of doing business that I haven't seen done.
So that's just how I was envisioning it.
Yeah.
And same with if the Parks Committee, and the Parks Committee one is an ongoing, because that Pamanian motion has multiple pieces and they all need to be looked at. And that's kind of why it's what we're doing this, because we may not be able to do all those things in there.
You read that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's really,
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
so it kind of needs to be fleshed out in terms of policy, money, anyway, and it didn't get that look. It was just done kind of at the 30,000 foot. And, you know, we had the issue with the $1 million grant put in the dog park and the new skate park, and none of that had been vetted yet, but staff, the people that live next to the town park were not given the opportunity to weigh in on a dog, you know, it was just,
I'll go on record and say, I'm so glad you didn't do a dog park.
well, there was just a
The
big.
liability would go through the roof.
Yeah, and the thing with this plan is there's big pieces missing in terms of the reality of doing it. You know, it needs more public input on a particular piece. And can we afford it? Do we have the staff? So that's kind of why it says what it says.
I'm wondering with the Parks Committee, like, I know that there are citizens involved with that. That would be one that I'm like, do you, like, we would, if we move to this method where it just stays within the town trustees, like, you need to communicate with them. Like, we have citizens who are really active. So that would just be my one.
I would think that a committee obviously could involve citizens if they wanted to, but I don't think that they necessarily would have to, because a lot of this stuff is, it's internal, it's dry.
The peony in motion, though, I'm sure that's one where you're gonna want to bring in like Ben Graves and some people that do a lot of park work here in town. Maybe even Max he lives in, just above Apple Valley's North Fork Pool Park and Rec. You know, having their involvement would be a good thing.
On a particular piece of it.
Just
while
a-
you're-
right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then you could, I suppose, open that up. It's just that thing needs to be done in pieces.
Sure does.
Thanks. That kind of like, I came in here thinking it was one way, but I really like this way. And then if we find that it doesn't work, then we address it. So I really like this direction of it.
Well, good. Everybody had, Ms. Patterson, anything else you would like to say?
I think with the Paonian motion, there's, you know, a list of those 10 people that helped write that whole thing. So maybe if they're just, you know, on an email all together and they can, you know, if it's important for them all to show, that would be
Are they in the
something.
front of it? Are they all listed?
Yeah, they are.
Or the
They have 8 of them maybe.
Yeah, but that would be really, that's one that I would like to see to get adopted. And if that means we're taking projects out that have no basis in reality, that's what we're doing to make something that can pass this board. Because in the long run, if there is like funding that's available from GoCo, having a plan, a strategic or a master plan just for parks goes a long way to say, hey, look, this has been the community's input. They want this. Please help fund it. It's going to go a long way to get that.
And that's the point, is that the staff has said, yes, we can do this. This is what we would have to do. Because that $1 million thing was kind of, didn't see it coming. It's kind of like, how would we possibly do this? We don't. No, they didn't. No, we didn't get funded. Pools Park did not get funded. Yeah, because it's like, what? Anyway. So no
Motion to
more.
adjourn?
Yes.
So do you have any updates on attorneys meetings? Maybe you emailed us out and I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Oh,
She
okay.
sent a whole bunch of calendar.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry.
Calendar
Invites. No, you sent an email with both agendas
I mean,
attached.
you
Yes,
can-
that, yeah. I only.
Monday.
But we have a lot of meetings right now, so.